Don't worry, we gave her a nice honeymoon. License to Kill sees James Bond, Agent 007, going after drugs baron Franz Sanchez after Sanchez feeds Bond's best friend, CIA agent Felix Leiter, to some sharks, and also kills Felix Leiter's wife. When Bond's obsession with tracking Sanchez down compromises other government-run investigations, he has his license taken off him, and so he must go it alone in order to bring this man to justice. Now, this film tends to sit in two camps with Bond fans. People who love Bond either do not like this film because of its darker tone, because of its harder edge, they feel it's not really a Bond film, or they embrace it. They love the new tone. They like where it takes the character. I am one of those people. I think the start of this change happened with Dalton's previous film, The Living Daylights, and I like where they go here. This is the first Bond film in this country to get a 15 rating certificate, and I think the last as well so far. But yeah, the darker tone humanises Bond a lot more in this film to what we're used to seeing him. He's much more emotionally driven here, particularly because his mission is primarily one of vengeance. The opening title sequence is business as usual. It's kind of what we've become accustomed to. The music to it's not one of the worst Bond songs, I gotta say, but it's also not one of the best. It sits somewhere in the middle. It's not one of my favourites, I must say, but I can't say I have anything particularly against it. It's just not that memorable for me. At the beginning of the film, we do get a reference to Bond having previously been married, and it doesn't really feel like an accident that in a film that is taking a much more darker, somber tone than we're used to seeing from the previous efforts, particularly the Roger Moore efforts, that they're harkening back to their previous most serious Bond film, which is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It feels like they want to bring some of that tone back, so why not reference that film, which they do here. You can see some inspiration for Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises in this film. One of the main stunts at the beginning is very reminiscent of the opening to Dark Knight Rises, in which some people board a plane and they kind of attach themselves to the back and flip it up. It's very similar indeed. You can see that this is where Nolan kind of got it from, only on a much grander scale. This is much more scaled down. It's only with a small kind of two-seated plane. But yeah, Nolan's been on record previously as saying that he's a big Bond fan. He's taken a lot of inspiration in Inception from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So yeah, you can see more of that here. You can see where he has got some of his ideas from. We only get one scene with M in this film, and that's when he takes away Bond's license. Now, I like this scene. I like the interplay between the two. It's very short, very brief, but I find that the scenes between M and Bond tend to be most effective when the two of them are at loggerheads, as they are here, when there's a little bit of conflict going on. As I say, the film is a lot more violent than we're used to seeing Bond. We do see someone get fed to sharks. We see several people being fed to sharks as it happens. We see Sanchez at the beginning of the film beating a woman. It's quite brutal. It's not done in any kind of comic way that Bond has previously tried to. Not that I find any comedy ever from having a woman being beaten, but just the tonal shift is very evident from the start, and some would probably go so far as to say that it's a little bit more sadistic. Robert Davi is very good as Sanchez, and he has a lot of presence in the role. He's very menacing, and you believe that he could go toe-to-toe with Timothy Dalton's Bond. He also has a really good henchman, played by Benicio del Toro, of all people. He plays Dario, who is this kind of sadistic young henchman who is very loyal to Sanchez. But he does some quite despicable things, and he delivers what few lines he has in that typical Benicio del Toro style. This is a guy who took a nothing part in Usual Suspects and made it something. There was barely any lines for him in that film, and he made something with it. I feel he does the same here. The Bond girls in this film are a bit of a mixed bag. One really good, one not so much. The good one is Pam Bouvier, played by Carey Lowell. I really like her character. She's got some balls, so to speak, if you pardon the terminology. She's a shotgun-toting woman with a pretty bad attitude. She isn't afraid to get into a fight. I really like the bar scene in which she's introduced. She proves that she can handle herself well, and she is beautiful to boot, obviously, this being a Bond girl. But I like what she brings to this film. I like the chemistry between her and Dalton. On the flip side to that, we have Lupe La Mora, a character played by Talisa Soto. Now, I don't like this character at all. She feels a little bit shoehorned in, doesn't really feel necessary. She's the character that I spoke about at the beginning, who gets a good kind of whipping from Sanchez, but I just don't like this character. I don't like the triangle that they kind of try to set up between her, Bond, and Carey Lowell's character. I just feel it's very forced, it doesn't need to be there, and whenever she's on screen I kind of wish the other Bond girl was on screen instead. That being said, that probably is the weakest point of the film. It's probably my biggest gripe of the film. We even get some decent scenes with Q in here. I've never been a big fan of Q. If you'll know if you've seen any of my previous Bond reviews, he's had a few bright moments, but on the whole I've never really warmed to him. I think he actually brings some charm to this film. I like the scenes that he's in. I like the typical scene we get with him where he's showing various gadgets, particularly the laser camera, in which Pam Bouvier nearly kind of fries Bond with it. The action on the whole is typically shot with style from director John Glenn, who, as I've said before, does seem to know most of the time how to handle an action sequence, particularly the final set piece involving some tanker trucks, some really nice explosions, some really good action, very good stunts. There are a few weaker moments in the action. A ninja fight scene kind of stands out. It springs to mind as not being particularly good. It looks a bit hokey in what is otherwise a more of a street brawler Bond. Anthony Zerber offers some good support as Milton Crest, a villain who kind of does some dodgy dealings on the side for Sanchez. This guy has a bit of a habit of having nasty things happen to his face. For anyone who's seen Star Trek Insurrection, you'll know what I'm talking about. But he is involved in a particularly violent scene in this film involving a decompression chamber. That's not to say it's all doom and gloom. A lot of lightness in particular comes from Wayne Newton's character, Professor Joe Butcher. Now, he's a televangelist who is also working for Sanchez. They do this scam using a televangelist network. People phone in, but really it's a cover to hide some dealings that Sanchez is doing. It's not really fully explained, but you kind of understand what's going on. But his character in particular is quite a light-hearted fellow. He comes out with this line all the time, "Bless your heart." He says that to Carey Lowell's character, and the way he delivers that line is quite cheeky, it's quite fun, and I really like his character actually. He is a villain, but he's a villain you kind of like. We do get some underwater scenes in this film when Bond and Bouvier decide to destroy some of Sanchez's money supply. It's a good sequence. Now, typically with Bond films, whenever we've had an underwater sequence, it can make the films lag a little bit. They can often come off as a little bit boring, a little bit plodding. Not so here. I think they don't linger on it too long. They do what they need to do in order to tell the story, and as a result, it actually comes off as a decent underwater scene. All in all, License to Kill is a very good Bond film indeed, probably my favourite since On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I think I'd probably even prefer it to that film. It was quite a shame that Timothy Dalton never went on to do more, but obviously the audience at the time, maybe this film was a bit ahead of them. They weren't quite used to seeing a Bond so brutal, so violent. This film certainly informs a lot of the Daniel Craig era, I think. I think we've gone back to this kind of Bond, and I think this film in particular is getting a lot more praise these days than it used to, and quite rightly so. Yeah, very good Bond film, and I give it a 7.5 out of 10. So if you've seen this film, please, I'd like to know what you thought about it, and I'd like to know, what do you think of the tone? Did it put you off Bond? Were you one of the ones that this film kind of soured the taste of Bond for you? Or would you rather have seen Dalton carry on in the franchise with this more darker, kind of realistic Bond? Comment below, let me know, and until next time, thanks for watching.